Hey folks, Real Honesty with Jarrett. I'm Jarrett. This is a beginning of a series I'm going to be doing about the Monday Night Wars. I'm going to be doing occasional episodes looking back at a particular Raw and Nitro episode of that night, on this certain day. This is also going to be a 20-year reflection of what happened on August 4th, 1997. Where more important stuff happened in WCW. A couple things happened on Raw. And I want to give a quick shout out to Zach Donegan on Twitter. He is actually doing an entire lengthy series or written blog on the Monday Night Wars, covering Raw, Raw, Nitro, and then the pay-per-views that WWE and WCW were doing. So I want to give a quick shout out to him, and I decided to kind of mix 20-year reflection, or my reflection shows, and this, and just go with it. So really, these are going to be kind of quick ones. I'll go into stuff if there's some backstory, but otherwise I'll just give you the results and give me my opinions on them. But we're going to begin with Raw that happened right after SummerSlam 1997, which my review is actually up right now, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Bret Hart had won the WWF title, WWE title from The Undertaker, and came out. And anti-US was the best, anti-US Bret Hart was the best Bret Hart. He really did so well here. Him and Jim Ross had a good banter. Owen built up for a rematch he was going to have with Austin. Austin suffered a neck injury at SummerSlam. Austin got a huge pop. Commissioner Slaughter was out there. He's the new commissioner, the new sheriff in town. He makes matches and enforces the whole thing from SummerSlam 97, where Brian Pillman was now going to have to wear a dress because he lost to Goldust. But Austin did get a huge pop. Seriously don't know how the hell Austin was walking after that. I mean, it is a miracle that he was walking. And really, it was a giant opening talking segment that took about 15 minutes. And by about 30 minutes in, we were at the third match. 35 minutes, and which should give you just an idea of just how much the wrestling really didn't count in Vince Russo's writing. Genius. The guy's so intelligent. The guy's stupid. But you had Shamrock versus Kama. The Supreme Fighting Machine. It was the right gimmick for Charles, a.k.a. Papa Shango, the Godfather. They tried to make it like a shoot fight, and it was really, really quick. I mean, Shamrock got the victory after a couple of the Los Barriquas had attacked Kama on the outside, which the Nation had interfered during this giant, 8-man tag, the Disciples of the Apocalypse, and the Barriquas had at SummerSlam. And which wasn't a very good match. But you had that, you had Shamrock win, which was fine, and Shamrock was coming off snapping and throwing a whole bunch of officials around because he did not win against British Bulldog at SummerSlam for the European Championship. And then you had a Brackus vignette. Well, they didn't do much with the guy. Guy had an impressive look. I didn't understand what the hell he was saying. Impressive look, though. Sunny was a ring announcer here. Good knowing that her oral skills are working out. Taka Michinoku, who beat Brian Christopher, never can get enough of watching Brian Christopher, one of the worst wrestlers ever, lose. Lawler was kind of funny with how, obviously it's his son, and JR and Vince were playing up the whole thing about that, especially JR, and Taka beat Brian Christopher, and then Brian Christopher snapped like a little whiny bitch that he is, and did the heel stuff to get some heat back, even though Taka had won, and Taka was vastly more talented. Taka's more talented now than Brian Christopher ever was in his youth. But yeah, it was a quick light heavyweight match. The light heavyweight division never really went anywhere in WWE, which is sad because they had Taka and a few good talents, but they couldn't compete with WCW. Then you have Vader versus Triple H. It was a quick countout, and China drop-kicked Paul Bearer. And the Sultan versus the Patriot. It was a squash. The Patriot did happen to mention, however, that in a pre-taped interview, I understand the Sultan is undefeated in WWE. Ignoring the fact that he lost to The Rock at WrestleMania 13, but I guess we don't talk about that. But the Patriot beat the Sultan, and then they built up to Bret Hart versus the Patriot at Ground Zero, and the Patriot had beaten Bret, even if it was a fluke or whatever, fluke victory. Had beaten him on a recent edition of Raw, so they were building up to this match, where obviously Bret won. The Patriot wasn't going to win the championship. But we're already on the fourth match, and we're barely halfway through the show. And then we have Shawn Michaels yelling at Vince, which coked up, late 1990 Shawn Michaels was prone to do. It was set up for In Your House Ground Zero against The Undertaker. Undertaker came out and said it's Undertaker's done far too much talking. By the way, the Shawn Michaels promo was really, really good. And then Undertaker and Paul Bearer had a back and forth where Bearer was on the Titantron, Taker was here, Kane is coming. Bearer seemed excited that another man was coming. That was mean, but anyway. Then you had Ahmed Johnson versus Chains. It was not good. Ahmed Johnson wins. He's a member of the Nation. The Nation beats him up, and Ahmed Johnson's written off TV because he had like a giant knee brace on there. It was not good. Ahmed Johnson was shit. I'm not saying DOA was that great, but Ahmed Johnson was shit. And then the Godwins versus the Headbangers. The Godwins win, and whose idea was it for them to wrestle in overalls with no shirts? Not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. But they beat the Headbangers. The Godwins were at least better wrestlers. The Headbangers weren't bad, but the gimmick was crap. And somehow they were former tag team champions. I don't get it. And then Brian Pillman versus Bob Holly. If Brian Pillman won, even though he's wrestling the dress, he would be able to not, wear the dress again. Well, he got distracted and Bob Holly got a victory over him, so Brian Pillman kept having to wear the dress because Goldust was out there. Goldust and Marlena. And in the main event, it was supposed to be Owen versus Austin. Austin was, of course, not medically cleared. Dear God, Vince, isn't that stupid to put somebody out there to wrestle so quickly after being injured? He would never do that. But Dude Love managed to beat Owen because Austin had come out. I don't understand how Austin was walking at this point, but you had Brett on commentary, and he was hyping up, the whole thing where WWF fans and the WWF are against me. And Austin attacked Owen by hitting him in the head with a slammy, and Dude Love got the win. This was not a good edition of Raw. It did tie up some storylines nicely, but this was not a very good edition of Raw. So, the part of the reason I decided to do it is because I'm like, okay, if I'm going to review Nitro, which did have a notable title change on it, I better review Raw. Raw, it had some nice stories playing out, but there were just too many squash matches, and it's like none of the matches mattered. And you had DOA taking all the time on their bikes going out to the ring for that Ahmed Johnson Chains match, and then never went anywhere. It was ridiculous. It was such crap. Then you go to Nitro, where even though it was a 3-hour edition of Nitro because it was their 100th episode, so they had to have something big happen. So they had some decent stuff on it. You had Michael Buffer introduce us, to the show. Let's get ready to rum. Not going to do it because trademark. He's got a trademark, despite the fact that his brother Bruce Buffer is a better ring announcer than him, and I will fight you if you disagree. The Nitro Girls, well, they exist, and they existed all over this goddamn show. Seriously, it was like Nitro Girls Central for most of the show. It wasn't bad. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't bad, and a couple of them looked good. Some of them didn't look good, my personal opinion. But then you had Bischoff and Hogan come out, and they hyped up the whole thing that WCW was putting Luger against Hogan for the title tonight, despite the fact they were facing off for the title at Road Wild 97, because giving away big matches on free TV, it worked initially and then was not a good idea. But it was good hype. It was really, really good hype. And then Mortis versus Curt Hennig. Curt Hennig beat him like that. And Mortis is a damn good wrestler. It's Canyon, sadly no longer with us. It was okay, and you had James Vanderberger there. James Vanderberg, a.k.a. James Mitchell, Father James Mitchell. The whole stable of Mortal Kombat characters was a terrible idea. I think it was only Mortis and Wrath, actually, now that I think about it. They kept trying to recruit Glacier, which he will come up later. But they had Hennig beat Mortis really quickly. A Sting video package, it was good memories, and was hyping up that J.J. Dillon was going to make an offer to Sting about coming back to the ring, that WCW needed him. Then you had Hector Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero Jr. versus Jeff Jarrett and Dean Malenko. Fun fact, Jeff Jarrett was the U.S. champion despite, and his tag team partner was the man he beat for the U.S. title. And Deborah was also there, the ugly-ass trash as she is. She did not deserve to be hit by Austin. I'm not saying that. I just always thought, even before that, she was ugly. So I'm sticking to that. But anyway, Hector still was wrestling pretty good in the ring. Scary how him and Eddie looked alike. I know family related. Obviously they're family. I know that, but it's just kind of scary. You look at them, it's like, oh wow, geez, it's like a little older version of Eddie. But it was an okay match. Jarrett and Dean Malenko got the win, as they should have. They were building up to a match with Steve McMichael and Chris Benoit at Road Wild 97, which, by the time you see this, my Road Wild 97 20-year reflection review may already be up. It was a decent tag match. There were 13 matches on this whole show, and even for a 3-hour Raw, that's a little much. You had Raven and Stevie Richards. They didn't go anywhere because Stevie Richards suffered a neck injury and then went back to ECW soon after. And Raven was in ECW until sometime in '99. And then the Giant beat up Lenny Lane, Scott D'Amore, which I believe was the same Scott D'Amore that was the current. It is currently backstage, and he was former Team Canada manager. I believe that was him being squashed. Didn't really get to see him facially. Kind of looked like him. But yeah, it was Lenny Lane, Scott D'Amore, and Joey Maggs, and it was quick, and it was really just Giant dominating 3 jobbers, even though Lenny Lane would go on to gain a little success as a West Hollywood Blondes, because gay jokes are funny, in wrestling, that is. But anyway, it hyped up Savage versus Giant at Road Wild, and then you had a montage of Lex's package that Tony Schiavone seemed excited to introduce. Kidding. I mean, it was a montage of Lex Luger highlights, wrestling highlights, even though he's not a very good wrestler. Then you had High Voltage versus Public Enemy. I would have rather them be C-based and be Public Enemy. Or Enemy. I don't know. Anyway, I screwed that up. But High Voltage, I should just take the I out because it was HGH Voltage. These guys were jacked to the gills. It was sloppy, as you would expect from a Public Enemy match. It was okay. Overall, it was okay. But it's like, it really was just going to where Public Enemy was going to get the win, and High Voltage was trying to get the heat back, which is weird because you would have thought High Voltage would try to play the baby faces. But I guess Public Enemy were over with the crowd. Public Enemy, Rocco Rock went through a table, and then Johnny Grunge got beat up with a table after the match. So whatever. And Alex Wright dances with the Nitro Girls, has a little interview where he speaks German. Alex Wright, they dropped the ball on that guy because he was really talented. I think he was only 25, 26 when the company went under. It's a shame that WWE didn't try to snatch him up. But I think he went back to Germany. Then Alex Wright versus Scotty Riggs. It was decent. It was quick. I mean, Alex Wright beating him was right. It was the right move for this reason, because he was facing Chris Jericho for the Cruiserweight title, Wright defending his championship. Well, championship. I probably should do it up here. Championship at against Jericho, which, was a decent little match. And then, of course, Luger had an interview and saying, "Spew your garbage. Hogan, you spew your garbage." For Luger's intelligence, he sure couldn't work words very well. Then Chris Benoit versus Six. This was really quick, and it was just a way to hype up that tag match I mentioned with Jarrett, Malenko, Mongo, and Benoit. It was a match that actually could have been pretty good, but it was given no time. It was like really, really quick. They did not use Six very well in WCW. Then you had Booker T versus Vincent. That was really quick. Anytime Vincent is beat up, it is a good show. Then the Barbarian versus Wrath. It was power versus power. A little sloppy in a couple parts. But Wrath, Brian Clark, who would later be part of Chronic, and was also Adam Bomb. He won. Wrath had a bit of a winning streak going, and I believe had an injury. I believe Goldberg beat him to continue his streak, and then Wrath was gone soon after to rehab his injury. Poor Barbarian. Ming came out to, stop Wrath, and it's like, Wrath, run. Ming will kill you, run. Yeah. It was an alright power versus power, but we're already on the 8th match and we're about nearly 2 hours in. Then you had a Steiner's interview where a blockbuster announcement. They have Ted DiBiase as their manager. It was cool and it lasted for a while. It was nice to see Ted DiBiase be babyface here. And it was just a hype their match with Hall and Nash at Road Wild. Then Psychosis versus Conan. It was also quick. And then Ray came out faking a knee injury and hit Conan with a crutch, because Conan's an idiot and apparently decided to fall for the shit. Psychosis are better, though. It was weird to see Ray help Psychosis, because they've been such big rivals for a while, but it was cool. So anyway, you had then another match, another quick match. You had Silver King and Damien, who were two Mexican luchadors. Well, okay, they were 2 Mexican wrestlers, they didn't have masks. Versus Glacier and Ernest Miller, and I can't stand Ernest Miller. I've said that enough. I don't like Ernest Miller. The guy's just not interesting. He's not a good wrestler. He's not any good at all. And the Glacier thing, Glacier was decent in the ring. It just didn't work. It ultimately did not work. So Glacier and Ernest Miller got the win. And that was it for that. Bischoff interviews J.J. Dillon. If the Giant puts his hands on me again, that's it. That's it. I'll sue WCW and all that, and I'll sue him out of existence and you out of existence. And then J.J. Dillon came out a little bit later. You had DDP and Ric Flair in the second best match of the night. Henning interfered, and that didn't work. And then DDP managed to win by DQ because Henning interfered again, and it was fine. It was fine for what it was. It was fine. I don't know. They gave away this free match on TV. They gave away this pay-per-view quality match on free TV, and it's like they just used it to advance an angle. I mean, DDP and Henning were feuding. I understand that. It's just, it feels bad that they did that with Flair. And then you have Viano 4 and 5 versus Hector Garza and Lizmark Jr. It's kind of a short version of the 6-man match that were part of the Bash at the Beach 97. Quick, Garza and Lizmark did not win. Viano's won, which they did the whole switcheroo, the whole twin magic. 1, 2, 3, and there we go. JJ's offer to Sting was turned down because it was for a match against Curt Hennig. Sting ripped it up. Obviously, he wanted to face Hogan, and they built to that. And I'm going a little quick here because some of this stuff wasn't necessarily the best, but you had Hogan versus Luger, which was sloppy, and Hogan dominated most of the goddamn match. I mean, at least with the exception of maybe like 2 minutes, Hogan dominated the whole thing. Then Luger started making his comeback. Everybody interferes. Hall interferes. Nash interferes. Savage interferes. So many people interfere. Luger fights him off, hits the rack. Crowd goes nuts when Hogan taps out. My God, the crowd went nuts. Went absolutely insane when he won. And then Luger dropped the title 5 days later. But it was a hell of a moment. I mean, it was weird that Luger was the one to end Hogan's title reign so suddenly out of nowhere. But Kevin Nash did talk about the fact that Luger was pretty over at that point. So anyway, what do you guys think of this first ever Monday Night War comparison, Raw versus Nitro? What do you guys think? Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, comment, subscribe. Twitter link is in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I'm John Ritlin. And by the way, Nitro won for this week. Nitro won hands down. And I will see you soon.